The Arabian Sea is a place of immense power and unpredictable moods. I've seen its calm beauty and its terrifying rage. But on the morning of June 9th, 2025, it bore witness to a disaster of a different kind, a man-made inferno. In the pre-dawn darkness, approximately 44 nautical miles off the coast of Kerala, India, the container ship MV Wanhai 503 was ripped apart by a massive explosion. It wasn't a storm or a rogue wave that struck. The violence came from within, originating deep in the vessel's metallic guts. A single cargo container, for reasons still under investigation, erupted with catastrophic force, setting off a deadly chain reaction that would test the limits of human courage and endurance. Imagine being asleep in your bunk, rocked gently by the motion of the sea, only to be jolted awake by a sound that feels like the world is ending. The steel hull of the ship would have shuddered violently, a deep, deafening boom echoing across the water. For the 22 crew members aboard, this was the start of a fight for their lives. The initial blast was just the beginning. Like a line of dominoes, adjacent containers began to explode, each one feeding the growing fire. Flames, hungry and relentless, shot hundreds of feet into the night sky, turning the dark sea into a flickering, hellish landscape. This wasn't just a fire. It was a raging battle against a monster made of burning steel and toxic fumes. The chaos on deck would have been absolute. Survival instincts kick in fast in moments like these. You don't think, you just react. Alarms would be blaring, mixing with the terrifying roar of the fire and the groaning of twisted metal. Thick, black smoke, choked with unknown chemicals from the burning cargo, would have billowed across the ship, making it impossible to see, impossible to breathe. The heat would have been immense, turning steel decks into hot plates capable of melting the soles of your boots. The crew faced a stark choice: stay on a burning, exploding ship, or abandon it for the vast, dark uncertainty of the open ocean. This is the ultimate survival scenario at sea. You are isolated, surrounded by danger, and help is miles away. The fire was spreading with terrifying speed from the middle of the ship towards the forward section, consuming everything in its path. The structural integrity of the Wanhai 503 was failing. Containers, some weighing many tons, were being tossed around like toys, crashing onto the deck or plunging into the sea below. It was a scene of pure, primal terror. In this crucible of fire and water, the only thing that mattered was getting out alive, a challenge that would require every ounce of strength and a huge amount of luck. The MV Wanhai 503 was not just any ship. She was a modern workhorse of global trade. Sailing under the flag of Singapore, she was a formidable vessel, built to carry up to 4,300 standard 20-foot containers. These ships are the lifeblood of our interconnected world, moving goods from one continent to another in a constant, unseen ballet of logistics. This particular voyage was part of the China-India Express service, a critical trade route linking the manufacturing hubs of Asia. She had departed from Colombo, Sri Lanka, and was making her way towards the bustling port of Mumbai in India. Her hold was packed with a vast array of products, a snapshot of the global economy stacked high in steel boxes. But a ship is more than just its steel and cargo. It is a community. On board the Wanhai 503 was a diverse crew of 22 sailors, men from different corners of Asia who had come together to earn a living on the high seas. This floating world was home to Media Group portrait of Asian sailors on cargo ship, diverse crew members at sea, at stock, at distribute _ equally, 8 Chinese nationals, 6 from Taiwan, 5 from Myanmar, and 3 from Indonesia. They were a team, a small family bound by shared duties and the isolation of life at sea. Each person had a role, from the captain on the bridge to the engineers in the engine room, all working in concert to guide their massive vessel safely across the ocean. When the explosion happened, their professional training was instantly pitted against the most basic human instinct: survival. The location of the incident, about 70 nautical miles west of Baipur, placed it squarely within India's search and rescue region. This geographical fact would prove to be the most critical element in the crew's chance for survival. While they were far from land, they were within the reach of one of the world's most capable maritime rescue forces. As the fire raged and the ship began to list dangerously, the crew's distress call crackled across the airwaves, a desperate plea for help sent out into the darkness. That signal, picked up by the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in Mumbai, set in motion a chain of events that would bring nations together. The cargo itself added a terrifying dimension to the crisis. Container ships often carry a mix of everyday goods and hazardous materials, declared and undeclared. The manifest of the Wanhai 503 reportedly included dangerous substances, and the explosions confirmed the presence of volatile cargo. Each container that caught fire was a potential bomb, and the smoke it released was a toxic cloud. For the crew, this meant they were not just fleeing a fire, they were fleeing a chemical hazard of unknown proportions. Their ship, once a symbol of global commerce, had transformed into a floating powder keg in the middle of the Arabian Sea. Fighting a fire on land is tough enough. Fighting one on a 4,300 TEU container ship in the middle of the ocean is a whole different level of extreme. The challenges are immense. The Indian Coast Guard and Navy teams that arrived on the scene were met with a vision from hell. The fire wasn't just burning, it was feeding on itself, with ongoing explosions sending shrapnel and debris flying. The heat radiated from the ship was so intense that it made a close approach incredibly dangerous. Responders had to battle not only the flames but also the very structure of the vessel, which was groaning and threatening to break apart at any moment. The first priority for the firefighting teams aboard ships like the Indian Coast Guard ship Samudra Prahari was to cool the hull. They used powerful water cannons, spraying thousands of gallons of seawater onto the smoldering steel. This is a delicate balancing act. On one hand, you need to douse the flames and prevent the fire from reaching the ship's fuel tanks or more hazardous cargo. On the other hand, pumping too much water onto a listing vessel can make it even more unstable, increasing the risk of it capsizing and sinking completely. The responders had to constantly assess the ship's stability while fighting the inferno, a high-stakes calculation with lives and the environment hanging in the balance. Making matters worse was the thick, acrid smoke that blanketed the area. This wasn't just wood smoke. It was a chemical cocktail released from burning plastics, electronics, and potentially industrial chemicals stored in the containers. The smoke made it nearly impossible for anyone to get on board the Wanhai 503. The decks were inaccessible, and the air was unbreathable without specialized equipment. Firefighting teams couldn't get to the heart of the fire. They were forced to fight it from a distance, a frustrating and often less effective method, like trying to put out a bonfire with a garden hose from across the street. The physical dangers were constant and evolving. As the fire weakened the ship's structure, containers started to topple. These steel boxes, each weighing several tons, would crash down onto the deck or plunge into the sea, creating a hazardous debris field around the vessel. For the rescue boats maneuvering nearby, every falling container was a potential death blow. The operation was a 360-degree threat environment. Danger came from the fire, from the toxic smoke, from the risk of further explosions, and from the debris falling from above. It was a true test of nerve and professionalism for every single person involved in the response. When the distress call from the MV Wanhai 503 went out, the response was immediate and massive. This is where training and preparedness show their true worth. The Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in Mumbai orchestrated a complex, multi-layered operation, deploying assets from both the Indian Navy and the Indian Coast Guard. It was a textbook example of interagency cooperation. The goal was twofold: save the crew and contain the fire. To do this, they threw everything they had at the problem. It was a race against time, with the fire spreading and the ship's condition worsening by the minute. The first to arrive on the scene were the sentinels of the sea. The Indian Coast Guard dispatched a flotilla of its most capable ships, including the Samudra Prahari, a specialized pollution control vessel, along with the offshore patrol vessels Sachet, Samarth, and Vikram. These ships are built for jobs like this, equipped with advanced firefighting systems and space for medical treatment. From the Indian Navy, the frontline destroyer INS Surat was diverted to the scene, bringing with it advanced surveillance capabilities and a helicopter for aerial searches. A Navy Dornier aircraft was also launched, circling high above to provide a bird's-eye view of the unfolding crisis, coordinating the movements of the ships below and searching for any signs of survivors in the water. Coordination is everything in a large-scale rescue. With multiple ships and aircraft from different services converging on one location, communication has to be flawless. The MRCC acted as the nerve center, processing information from the Dornier aircraft, the ships on scene, and other sources to build a clear picture of the situation. They had to manage the search patterns for the missing crew, direct the firefighting efforts, and plan for the medical evacuation of the injured. This wasn't just about sending ships, it was about creating a synchronized web of rescue assets, each performing a specific role in a highly dangerous and dynamic environment. The sheer scale of the operation demonstrates India's commitment to being a net security provider in the Indian Ocean. This wasn't happening in a calm harbor, it was taking place in the open sea, far from shore. The logistics of sustaining such an effort, keeping ships fueled, crews rotated, and supplies flowing, are enormous. The Indian forces were not just responding to an emergency, they were projecting power for a humanitarian purpose. They were telling the world that if you are in trouble in their waters, help is coming. For the terrified crew of the Wanhai 503, the sight of those gray hulls on the horizon must have been the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. For the men and women of the Indian Navy and Coast Guard, this was not a drill. This was real life, with real stakes. Their training prepares them for the mechanics of rescue, but honestly, nothing can fully prepare you for the raw, visceral reality of a disaster like this. From their perspective, approaching the Wanhai 503 was like approaching a wounded beast. The ship was listing heavily, smoke pouring from its guts, and the constant threat of another explosion hung in the air. Their job was to go towards the danger that everyone else was fleeing. It really takes a special kind of courage to do that, to push aside your own fear to save the lives of strangers. The primary mission was to find the survivors. After abandoning the ship, the crew members were scattered in the water, at the mercy of the currents. The rescuers in their smaller, more nimble boats had to navigate a treacherous debris field of fallen containers and other wreckage. Looking for a person in the vastness of the ocean is like searching for a needle in a haystack, especially with the sea churned up by the incident. Every wave can hide a person from view. The rescuers scanned the water relentlessly, their eyes straining to catch any sign of life. A waving arm, a flash of color from a life jacket, anything at all. Imagine the relief and adrenaline rush of spotting someone. The boat crews would have skillfully maneuvered through the debris, shouting words of encouragement. Pulling an exhausted, oil-covered survivor from the water is a moment of pure, unadulterated success. But, the work doesn't end there. Many of the rescued crew were injured, some critically. They were suffering from burns, smoke inhalation, and the physical trauma of the explosion and abandoning the ship. The rescuers became medics, providing immediate first aid on the bouncing decks of their boats before transferring the casualties to the larger ships for more advanced care. This mission was a powerful display of international teamwork, even before the diplomats got involved. The rescuers didn't see nationalities. They saw fellow mariners in distress. They were saving Chinese, Taiwanese, Indonesian, and Myanmarese sailors. On the waves, in the face of a common enemy like fire, the things that divide us on land seem to disappear. It's a shared humanity, a mariner's code that says you don't leave anyone behind. The Indian sailors put their own lives on the line to uphold that code, demonstrating a level of professionalism and bravery that deserves the highest respect. They were the calm in the center of the storm. The story of the 22 crew members aboard the MV Wanhai 503 is one of both miraculous survival and profound tragedy. When the order to abandon ship was given, it was a moment of ultimate desperation. Leaping from the deck of a massive burning vessel into the dark ocean below is an act of pure survival instinct. You are trading one set of dangers for another, hoping the sea will be more merciful than the fire. For 18 of the crew, that desperate gamble paid off. They were found by the Indian rescue teams, plucked from the churning waters, and brought to safety. Their ordeal was far from over, but they were alive. The rescue of these 18 sailors was a testament to their own will to live and the swift action of the Indian forces. Once aboard the rescue ships, they were given immediate medical attention. The scene would have been one of organized chaos, medics assessing injuries, providing blankets to ward off hypothermia, and offering water and comfort. 5 of the crew were critically injured and required urgent care. They were treated by the medical teams on board the Indian Navy ship as it steamed towards New Mangalore port, turning a warship into a floating hospital. For these survivors, the sight of the Indian coastline would have been a symbol of hope and a second chance at life. However, The relief of the rescue was overshadowed by the sorrow of the search. 4 crew members remained missing. 2 were from Taiwan, 1 from Myanmar, and 1 from Indonesia. As the firefighting operations continued, a parallel mission was in full swing to find these 4 men. Rescue divers were deployed to search the waters around the stricken vessel, while the Dornier aircraft and the ship's helicopter conducted sweeping aerial searches. The rescuers held on to hope, scanning the vast expanse of the sea for any sign of their missing comrades. Every passing hour, however, made the chances of finding them alive more remote. As of today, June 11th, 2025, the search continues, but the operation is transitioning from rescue to recovery. This is the heartbreaking reality of maritime disasters. Despite the best efforts, the power of the sea and the ferocity of the fire sometimes claim lives that cannot be saved. The families of these 4 men are left in an agonizing state of uncertainty, waiting for news thousands of miles away. The successful rescue of 18 is a cause for celebration, but it is tempered by the deep sense of loss for the 4 who were lost to the waves. Their absence is a solemn reminder of the human cost of these events. While the human drama played out on the surface, a silent and potentially devastating crisis was brewing beneath the waves. The MV Wanhai 503, crippled and smoldering, had become a ticking environmental time bomb. The ship was carrying approximately 100 tons of bunker oil, the thick, heavy fuel that powers its massive engines. A major leak of this oil would be catastrophic for the sensitive marine ecosystem of the Kerala coast, an area renowned for its rich biodiversity, pristine beaches, and vibrant fishing communities. The specter of a black tide washing ashore loomed large over the entire operation, adding another layer of urgency. The threat wasn't just from the fuel oil. The ship's cargo was a toxic mystery box. With an estimated 50 containers having fallen into the sea and many more burning, the contents were being released into the environment. These containers could have held anything from plastics and electronics to industrial chemicals and other hazardous materials. This debris not only posed a navigational hazard to other vessels, but also threatened to poison the water and marine life. The Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, or INCOIS, immediately began modeling the debris drift, warning that it could reach the Kerala coast within 3 days, bringing with it an unwelcome tide of pollution. This incident came at a particularly sensitive time, serving as a grim echo of a recent disaster. Less than a month earlier, on May 25th, the container ship MSC Elsa III had sunk off the same coast, spilling its cargo and prompting an environmental emergency that led to fishing bans and a massive cleanup effort. The fire on the Wanhai 503 amplified existing fears and underscored the vulnerability of this coastline to the risks of modern maritime shipping. The authorities were on high alert, deploying oil spill containment teams and activating trajectory modeling systems to prepare for the worst-case scenario. It was a battle on 2 fronts, saving lives at sea and protecting the life within it. The ship itself, listing at a precarious 10 to 15 degrees, posed the ultimate threat. If it were to sink, it would take its remaining fuel and cargo down with it, creating a long-term source of pollution on the seabed. The ongoing salvage operation is therefore critical. The goal is to stabilize the vessel, extinguish the last of the smoldering fires, and eventually tow it to a safe location where its cargo and fuel can be safely removed. This is a slow, dangerous, and incredibly complex process. The fate of the Kerala coast hangs in the balance, dependent on the skill and success of the salvage teams working to defuse this environmental time bomb. In the world of geopolitics, nations often speak in a language of competition and rivalry. This is especially true of the complex relationship between India and China, 2 Asian giants with strained ties and competing interests. Yet, out of the smoke and chaos of the MV Wanhai 503 disaster, something truly remarkable emerged, a public and heartfelt expression of thanks. In a rare diplomatic gesture, the Chinese government officially expressed its gratitude to the Indian Navy and the Indian Coast Guard for their prompt and professional rescue of the Chinese citizens and other nationals aboard the burning ship. This was more than just a polite thank you. It was a moment of shared humanity that transcended political divides. This statement was significant because it cut through the usual narrative of suspicion. For years, the headlines have been dominated by border disputes, economic competition, and strategic maneuvering between the two countries. But in this moment of crisis, none of that mattered. What mattered was that Indian sailors were risking their lives to save Chinese sailors. The rescue operation became an unintentional act of diplomacy, building a bridge of goodwill where one was sorely needed. It was a powerful reminder that beneath the surface of international politics, we are all human, and the instinct to help someone in peril is a universal one. The positive sentiment was not limited to China. The Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, the flag state of the vessel, also publicly praised India's swift and effective response. They expressed their deep appreciation for the massive effort launched by the Indian forces and dispatched their own team to assist in the investigation and salvage operations. This chorus of international approval highlighted India's growing stature as a reliable and capable partner in the Indian Ocean. India didn't just talk about being a regional leader, it demonstrated it through decisive action when it mattered most. This incident shows how humanitarian crises can sometimes create opportunities for positive engagement. While it won't erase the deep-seated strategic challenges between India and China, it creates a data point of cooperation. It's a shared memory of a time when uniforms and flags were less important than life jackets and rescue lines. These moments are rare and should be valued. They prove that even in a world full of friction, common ground can be found in the most unexpected of places. In this case, on the fiery deck of a container ship in the middle of the Arabian Sea. It was a testament to the mariner's code, writ large on the world stage. The dramatic rescue of the MV Wanhai 503 crew is a story of heroism and heartbreak, but it is also a powerful lesson for the future. It highlights the inherent risks that come with our globalized world, where massive ships carrying potentially hazardous materials are a constant presence on our oceans. Fires, explosions, and extreme weather are dangers that every mariner faces. This incident serves as a stark reminder that we must continually improve safety standards, cargo inspection protocols, and crew training to prevent such disasters from happening in the first place. Prevention is always the best survival tactic. The event unequivocally showcased India's leadership and capabilities as a major maritime power in the Indian Ocean. The speed, scale, and coordination of the response were world-class. The seamless cooperation between the Indian Navy and the Indian Coast Guard demonstrated a high level of preparedness and professionalism. By successfully rescuing 18 foreign nationals from a terrifying situation, India didn't just save lives, it sent a strong message to the international community. The message is clear. The Indian Ocean has a reliable guardian, a nation willing and able to act as a first responder for any mariner in distress, regardless of their nationality. Furthermore, the incident underscores the absolute necessity of international cooperation in maritime emergencies. The crew of the Wanhai 503 was a mix of nationalities. The ship was flagged in Singapore, operated by a Taiwanese company, and rescued by India, with China expressing thanks. This is the reality of modern shipping. No single nation can manage these challenges alone. The positive diplomatic outcome, especially the rare praise from China, shows that humanitarian action can build bridges and foster trust, even between rivals. In an increasingly fractured world, these moments of shared purpose are more important than ever. Ultimately, the fire on the MV Wanhai 503 is a story of human courage against the overwhelming power of nature and technology gone wrong. It's a story about the bravery of the crew who fought for their lives, the skill of the rescuers who risked everything to save them, and the collaborative spirit that emerged from the crisis. As the salvage crews continue their dangerous work and the environmental threat is managed, the enduring legacy of this event will be one of resilience. It is a lesson written in smoke and seawater. In the face of disaster, our shared humanity is our greatest strength, and our willingness to help one another is our ultimate key to survival.